Hello and welcome to the Battle Room. My name is Colin, and today I'm joined with a very special guest. We're joined by YzanVGC today, and he recently got top 4 in the Zelda Tour, which was a big money tour, the high roller tournament, if you will. $50 entry fee. The winner got like $1,800, and Yuki did well enough to place in the top 4. So, congratulations again on that. That's a pretty insane feat. So obviously this tournament had a ton of cash on the line. Like, it was a lot of high stakes to enter. You had to pay $50. How did you change your building approach, or did you like do anything different, knowing that obviously if you lost, you lost like $50, you're out $50?
Yeah, sort of like separate where I think instead of thinking about the tournament, I thought about the team, and then I got really lucky that there was a really high stakes tournament that happened. So I said, oh, I feel really confident in my team. I'm going to go to it. Like, it was just this team, like, it was inspired by a team that I found with a Japanese player who was very successful with it earlier on in the season. And yeah, I just really liked the way it worked. So I just sort of adapted it more to my play style. And, I started playing a lot with it on ladder, and I really liked it. And I said, oh, I wish there was like a tournament that's really important to use this in. And, there's a Players Cup, like initial laddering tournament that's happening soon, but that's best of 1. And I felt like this was really good for best of 3. So I thought, oh, what best of 3 tournament's happening? And then I found about this, $50 go in or go home kind of tournament. I said, oh, this is perfect. So I just like spent a lot of time optimizing for that. And yeah, it ended up working out for me.
So how long have you been working on this team? Like, because it seems like this is like, this is a special team, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels really special to me. I have a lot to say about it. So I really appreciate you reaching out and treating me like this. But yeah, I think I probably, when I first saw the initial team that I adapted this from, it's probably been about 2.5 weeks or so. It's been a lot of trial and error.
So obviously, like you mentioned earlier, it's more catered towards best of 3. So did open team sheets, like, do you think that helped or hurt the team, or like, did you build it towards the open team sheets, or just building like this team in general?
Yeah, I sort of built it in general, like it just felt solid to me. So yeah, I just like the concept of it. I guess I'll start by just explaining the overall concept of the team. It's to really, the core really is the Pokemon Incineroar, Amoonguss, Porygon 2, and Glastrier. The first 3 are really important. That's what I basically cycle around to go through the early and mid game. The idea is that you have these Pokemon like Porygon and Amoonguss who can really recover health really easily. And yes, they don't have that many strong attacks, but the idea is that you slowly chip at your opponent while you don't lose too much health and momentum, all through Trick Room so that you're faster. And hopefully your opponent Dynamaxes sometime while you're cycling these to try to get some momentum, and that you don't lose too much resources while they're doing that. And after that's over and you've knocked out 1 Pokemon or so, then you finally bring your Glastrier at full health, and then you just start crushing everything with its max moves. And especially since it's good max moves are ones that boost its defense or special defense of your team. You have like a Porygon that can take a lot of hits and still do Trick Room later on, so that even after you're done with Dynamax, you can finish off their 1 or 2 Pokemon left. So that's the overall concept, and I really like that because I really enjoy formats that are a lot more like cycling between Pokemon, sort of like VGC 17. That's sort of the approach I wanted to take on this format, and I really struggled to find a team that's like that. But yeah, I found a Japanese player using the same 4 Pokemon, but with different moves and different items. But that's sort of what it sounded like how he played it, and I just adapted and came up with Togekiss and wrote him independently. Sorry, I feel like I sort of went on a rant. I'm trying to remember what your initial question was. Oh, if I built this for best of 3 and like open team sheet and how it helped. So for example, like my Amoonguss has Aqua Berry, and that's a very unexpected item right now. Like historically, for example, in like VGC 18, when you had Mega Charizard running around and doing lots of damage, Amoonguss really ran Aqua Berry a lot because there was just fire types everywhere. But now it's not as common as getting hit with like an Airstream, or you also have Pokemon like Indeedee or Glastrier with different types who can hit knockout Amoonguss. So Focus Sash is also pretty common, but I went for Aqua Berry because I wanted to deal better with opposing Incineroar. Just because if we have like a cycling mirror, then whoever's Incineroar can do more damage to the opposing Amoonguss usually has a more favorable matchup. So that's the reason I use Aqua Berry, and on ladder, that really helped a lot because I would see like Heatran Dynamax turn 1 and it would go for a Max Flare and like a Fake Out maybe and think it would OHKO and it doesn't. And then I have a Porygon that sets up Trick Room in the meantime. And then now I have an Amoonguss who can Spore in Trick Room and a Porygon still at full health. And I can recover that health from Amoonguss, of course. So it worked a lot on ladder, but of course that's not going to happen in a best of 3 where it's open team sheet. But I had a lot of confidence in my team with the amount of flexibility it has. That even if my opponent knew all my items, it would still be favorable for me because it also means I have access to their information and I can form my game plans a lot easier.
You mentioned to me earlier, like before we started the interview, that this team is very like place the timer. Like that's one of your win conditions. And you told me you went to 10 games went to time, right? And that's not something I think a lot of players, especially new players, like even think about. So obviously, you said you tested it a lot. Like, did you test it on ladder or on Showdown more?
I tested more on ladder, especially knowing that this tournament is going to be on the Nintendo Switch. I wanted to make sure that I was just more acclimated to the Switch environment more than the Showdown environment because obviously they're not exactly the same.
Yeah. So when you came, like, did you like was timer something that you just found out while testing the team, or did you like have the intention like I have a game plan like? Against certain teams or against like just in general, if I can see the timer win con, I'll take it?
Yeah, it's definitely something I found out through ladder. Like through ladder, I noticed that a lot of my matches went really long, and that's saying a lot because I think this is the longest. You could correct me if I'm wrong, since you're the VGC veteran, but I think this is probably the longest game timer we've ever had in 20 minutes or so.
I think there was one time where I think we had 25 minutes, but that was I think we had 25. I don't actually remember. I think it was 18. I'm unsure, but 20 minutes is basically like that was like for 1 year, but otherwise it's always like 20 minutes is like as long as it goes. So this is a pretty long one.
Right, certainly longest. And I think in past formats when I think at one point we had like 7 minutes and 10 minutes, and those frequently went to time. And I know people definitely like had that in their minds when team building, like, oh, how am I going to deal with time? But that really hasn't happened recently because 20 minutes is so long on the Switch. So it's definitely something I just found out organically. And I realized it works really favorable for the team, again, because I have Pokemon like Amoonguss and Porygon 2. Like, if I really focus on making sure those two are the ones that are getting hit with attacks rather than like Incineroar, and definitely not Glastrier, since I usually don't bring that in until I really have to or toward the end game, I can recover a lot of that health. And if I'm doing a good job chipping out my opponents, I can eventually get one Pokemon knocked out, and then it's a 4v3. And if it starts to become like 3 minutes left, you see that like title and your Nintendo Switch, then I can bring in Glastrier immediately, max it, and then start dealing tons of damage in the probably 2 or 3 turns I have left. And even if in that moment they get one knockout on me, I should probably be able to retaliate with a knockout on my own. So usually my wins were timer at least like 3 Pokemon on my side and 2 on their side. And that's really, really important when you have Pokemon that might be harder to deal with on your opponent's end. Like I remember, like how I won both games against a really strong player. His name is Yu Yatada, but he had a Rotom that was really hard to beat because it has leftovers. And any Pokemon with leftovers is really hard for my team to beat because the point is I do incremental damage, and if they incrementally heal that up, it's really hard for me. So I usually just leave it be, but yeah, like Rotom in general is also hard for my team to hit because it's a historically hard Pokemon for Glastrier to do damage to. So both times I think it was like a 2v1 versus Rotom that I ended up winning in time. So yeah, definitely something I just figured out on my own organically, but it definitely worked for the team because it's so bulky, and you just play consistently to take damage in your Porygon, your Amoonguss.
So I think a lot of players, like especially now, when it comes to like these bulky squads, right? Like I think we're seeing a lot more of it now in Series 7. Do you prefer to play with like a bulkier, more defensive oriented style, or is it more like, because there's like hyper offense versus bulky kind of teams, right? Like a lot of that's like, especially with Dynamax, I think it can favor either one, but I think a lot of people are more like thinking like hyper offense might be like a little bit better. How do you feel like this team? Do you feel like the defensive style is more your way?
I do agree. I think it is more my style, but I think it also depends on the metagame. Like, I think my personal opinion is that ever since we got the Dynamax mechanic, I think defensive teams are more favored just because the mechanic itself is more defensive. Like, you can see all these like flashy animations and you see like, max airstream, max geyser, and like, it takes like 10 seconds to see these moves. But what actually is happening is that these Dynamax Pokemon are getting twice their health, but their move power only goes up by about 50%. So most moves are capped at like a limit of 150 or so, but they're usually 130, and their base power is like 90 or so. So that's about a 50% difference, and that's not as different as like the 100% difference in the health because you double. So it's inherently more defensive mechanic in my opinion. So I've gravitated more towards defensive teams because whenever I try to use hyper offense, I notice that they can, if they pivot like correctly, then they can like outlast my hyper offense, and then they might still have a Dynamax left to counter with me. So I've definitely gravitated more towards defensive teams in this rule set. But for example, my team that I used to get Day 2 at Worlds in 2019 was a hyper offense team with like Mega Gengar and Groudon Xerneas, where you just set Tailwind turn 1, your opponent can't switch, and then you bring in Groudon Xerneas, and then you like destroy them. Yeah. And that was like a very different way to play the game. Never went to time, and it's all about like making reads like as much as you can. So I definitely am trying to learn how to adapt to different metagames. But for this one, I think at least with the teams I've had success with, have all been defensive teams.
It's really true. Like the Dynamax mechanic, like I know, like the double HP is absolutely nuts, especially for like if you outlast too, you're just easily gonna beat them.
Right, and also just the way they nerfed like Max Knuckle and Max Ooze, like they only do 95 at most or something, whereas like Steel Spike and Max Quake, like they both do 130 still, and they boost your stats. So I think that's another evidence of how they really made sure that hyper offense doesn't do too much.
So this format was open team sheets, and open team sheets is something like, we've been introduced from the Players Cup, right? That's like where we started using them. How do you feel about open team sheets? Because I know, I think for some people they're very divided on whether or not they like them. So like, how do you feel about open team sheets? Do you think it favors the better player, or do you think like it's just like, it ruins a fundamental skill that like reading an opponent's team from team preview? Like that's something like I've had to do for like 10 years of playing. Do you think like because I lose that skill it's like a disadvantage for me, or do you think it just favors the better player?
It's so hard. I mean, historically Pokemon is not like this. So like a veteran like yourself, I totally understand why you would struggle with this, because it's just not how you've been taught to play Pokemon. Like you've been taught to be clever with your team building so that even if it's a best of 3 in game 1, you could still steal a game with like an item or a move that is like super unconventional. But now you can't do that anymore at all. Like the only way you can really surprise your opponents is with like the stats, like how you train your Pokemon with the effort values and the individual values, or just like how you lead and being unexpected there. So I think it definitely brings, I don't even want to say that it makes team building less creative, because you still have to be creative in how you get your team together to work for any situation. Like the surprise factor is not there as much anymore, but there's still a lot of things to consider. So I don't even want to say that it detriments team building, but definitely encourages like a different skill. I don't know, I think I'm pretty ambivalent. I've historically not performed as well in open team sheet. So I used to be like that, but like the team I used felt so good because like for example, like Amoonguss, it's so clear like what my opponent has to counter it. It's either they have a taunt user, or they have Tapu Fini to set up a Misty Terrain, or they have something else. But because Amoonguss is a Pokemon that historically just attracts so much attention in games that if I know what they're using to counter it, then I can use that to my advantage. So for example, if I know they don't have Tapu Fini, but I see they have Taunt Grimmsnarl, but it doesn't have Faith Scout, then I can lead Togekiss Amoonguss really safely, follow me, and then spore their Grimmsnarl, and then if my opponent can't one hit knockout my Togekiss, which they usually can't, thanks to like the Walken Berry, I can spore their partner, and if it doesn't have Protect, then it's like a completely safe play, and I get so much momentum out of that. I was really lucky in certain matchups where like I was able to do that, and like they really could not punish it. And sleep is so dangerous right now that it really worked in my favor. So I don't know if I have anything conclusive to your direct answer, but I think it is interesting how changed like how this game is played.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like a whole different kind of game. I don't think it's for better or for worse. Like I definitely have abused the same thing that you're talking about, where like I used Celesteela and Porygon 2, and it was like a bulky Leech Seed Celesteela, and then I had Eerie Impulse P2, and it was like if I find the taunt user, I can just fake it out with Instant, and I feel really confident that I can, like, knowing where the taunt is sometimes is like half the battle. So like you're never gonna get caught off guard by like some silly like Instant with taunt, or like, oh, that's a Feeny that has taunt for some reason. So it's like I think sometimes it can benefit the more seasoned player, better player, because you're able to like you said, like you found a creative way that you would never be able to do in like a best of 3, like until you found out where the taunt was. Like you'd have to like spend a game and you'd find out, oh, Grimmsnarl has taunt, but now you're able to just do something like Togekiss Amoonguss and like force a situation that I never would see that coming, you know? Like if you led that against me, I'd be like, what is he doing? They're both so bulky. Like I see it on the team sheet.
Right.
And then you'd press follow me and be like, oh, I'm going to sleep, aren't I? You know?
Yeah, right.
So it's like I think like it can benefit like creative players, you know, like where you're finding new ways that you wouldn't be able to do that in a best of 1 ever. Like you wouldn't know where the taunt is, you wouldn't think necessarily to lead that, but since it's an open team sheet, you're able to do something pretty cool with it.
Yeah, and at the same time though, I think there's definitely a skill in like mitigating risks. So you know, if you see, I'm starting to think of an exact example, but for example, like Urshifu, right? Like a big thing is like, oh, does it have Choice Band or is it Focus Sash? And I think part of the skill that's lost now is like ability to figure out what item they have before they even play the Pokemon. So you know, maybe if they lead it, you think, oh, maybe it's probably Choice Band because you know, they don't care about like losing its Sash or something. Whereas if they bring it at the very end, you think, oh, it's probably Focus Sash because they want to make sure that they win the end game. It's a lot more reliable in the end game. Whereas, you know, Choice Band is probably a lot more offensive to use in the early game. So that's definitely a skill that is a part of the game like originally, but is like not part of it when it's open team sheet. So I think there's definitely a different skill set, and I think it rewards different players, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So Togekiss has felt like it's been lost to to time, basically. Like no one's really using it. I've seen a couple Japanese players and like a couple, you know, like a handful, like, you know, a couple Togekiss here and there, like maybe once a day, right? That's actually like way too generous. But you know, what made you want to use Togekiss in that slot specifically, and like how do you think Togekiss fares in like, because obviously it went from being like the best Pokemon in the game, I would argue, to now being like, you know, fringe used. How do you feel about Togekiss, and like what did it accomplish on your team?
So I guess the first you answer the first question on my team itself. The first 4 Pokemon are really, really weak to Urshifu. Even against teams that have Urshifu, there are depending on the opponent's other members, like I would never bring Togekiss against them, and that's because the team is well equipped to beat Urshifu. Like you just have to make sure that you time when you bring your Incineroar in to have fake out access so you can set Trick Room again. Like as long as that the opponent's Urshifu is not moving first, or that you can punish them for moving first, it's not that big of an issue because you know, it has like Focus Sash, or it's like a more frail Pokemon. So even if it has super effective damage on, you know, Glastrier, Incineroar, and Porygon 2, which are part of my core, you know, if you position yourself correctly, like it's usually not an issue. You know, I anticipate against really, really good players, they would just find a way to, like, just a loophole to, like, get through that 4. So I wanted to have Togekiss in general. And also just having another redirection user was really, really important. For example, against, like, Whimsicott teams, like, Togekiss single-handedly won me, I think my top... No, this is still in Swiss. I think it was, like, my round 6 match or something. And mind you, I started 0-2, so I couldn't afford to drop a single match after the second round. So I had to win. But it was a hyper offense team, actually, that was Hail. So I think it was like Alolan Sandslash, Benelux, and Whimsicott. And like that was super important because Whimsicott can actually taunt your Porygon through Rage Powder of Amoonguss because grass types are unaffected by Rage Powder. So Togekiss is really, really good against those Whimsicott teams because Follow Me is not affected by Safety Goggles or grass types. That was really, really important because against those hyper offense teams, if I can get Trick Room up, like usual when I wait to bring Blaster until the very end, I bring it immediately so I can just start like, you know, just spamming max moves in Trick Room and their Pokemon are usually so frail that they either get knocked out easily or they still can't break through my defense through the defense boost that Porygon and Glastrier get. So it's a totally different way of playing, but that would never happen if I didn't have Togekiss, because especially if they have like a Psychic Terrain user, I can't fake out with Incineroar. So in those scenarios, Togekiss is like essential. And against other teams, I also have Rotom Wash. And most teams, I think, try to deal with Rotom Wash with just Rillaboom, for example. And Togekiss is really, really good against Rillaboom because it resists basically all of its attacks. And you can, just absorb it all with Follow Me. So one way to play the team is literally have 2 redirection users, Incineroar and Rotom, and you just go to like +4 with Nasty Plot and just max. And it sounds so simple, but depending on the team, it just works. Like they really cannot do too much about it. So that was really important for Togekiss. In general, in the format, yeah, I think it's really interesting how people sort of slept on Togekiss, because I saw so many memes on Twitter, people saying, oh, I feel like shit, I just want Togekiss back. And I was like, well, actually, you can have Togekiss back. Like, it's still really, really solid. Like, the most scary, like, offensive Pokemon right now is Urshifu and Rillaboom. And against both of those, it does fantastic, because at least Urshifu does, 4 times effective damage if they're the Dark variant. And it can do Follow Me, and basically none of their attacks can do even neutral damage. So, and that's a niche that Tapu Fini doesn't have, because Tapu Fini cannot redirect attacks. So, in that way, Togekiss is super, super important, even if they can't set up Misty Terrain. So I've always been eyeing it, and then on this team, it seemed to fit perfectly. So yeah, that's why I used it.
So you mentioned that you started out 0-2 in like this tournament, right? So how did you recover because like I've won 0-2 in tournaments too before, right? And you have to make that sick comeback, and like obviously if you do it, it's worth it. But like how do you just start at 0-2 and just be like, all right, I gotta win like how many? Was it 6 in a row or like 5 in a row, right? Like it's not easy. How do you recover mentally and like zone in like to win all those games to make it out of day one?
I guess firstly, I don't know. I guess I don't want to be like arrogant or anything, but I feel pretty confident in my mental abilities. Like I don't usually drag losses or mistakes. Usually, like I just make sure I don't make them again if possible, and just sort of move on. So it's been a long time since I've been like truly tilted, especially since luck is so much a part of Pokemon that like I signed up for it. Like if I wanted no luck, I would be playing chess. And chess is boring, so I'm not playing chess. I'm playing Pokemon. So like I can't get too upset if I lose to bad luck.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that aspect, like it didn't bother me too much. I would probably quit if I was not very confident with my team. And I noticed like there's like a very fundamental flaw, and like it's very obvious I lost the first 2 matches. But in reality, both of them were very close, best of 3s, which both went. We were the last matches for both rounds for obvious reasons that I explained earlier.
Yeah.
I wasn't discouraged in like how the team's performing. I think I played. They were not horrible matches for me, but they were pretty neutral, and I just think there were things that I had to improve on, and I think the improvement really helped in the rest of the rounds. So I think as long as I'm confident in the team, I'm always okay starting 0-2, because also it means that the overall skill level of the players I'm playing are like probably usually lower in the earlier rounds after that than if I went 2-0, because then I'm only playing people who are undefeated. So if you think of it that way, it's not too bad. And like I felt confident in my team, so I kept going. There was another tournament in that Victory Road hosts, and that one was actually longer. It was 9 rounds, and I started 0-2, but ended up going 7-0 after that and made top cut. So I guess it also helped that I sort of had that on my resume that like I know it's possible. So that definitely helped.
So like I think your team, like, because I've used it, I've messed around with it, and I found it really interesting that like I didn't fully understand it really. Like after talking to you about it, I definitely understand it a lot better. But like it's still kind of crazy, right? You have 4 support Pokemon and 2 damage dealers. Like I noticed that almost instantly, right? So like so how did the team, I guess like you mentioned how it functioned, but like were you ever worried, like, or did you ever run into issues where you had too little damage to power through?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That happens when I have opponents who have setup Pokemon that I cannot deal with Intimidate, Spore, or Eerie Impulse. Like those are the ways I mitigate my opponent's damage output. And it's really important that like at least one of them works, because if they don't, then yeah, you're right. I don't have enough damage output to counter it. So if they're able to set up, or I just can't touch them, like just typing wise or something, it's really, really bad. So a really good example of that is Registeel on a Tapu Fini team. Yeah, like I have Flare Blitz on Incineroar, it does super effective damage. But if they get one, even if they don't get a Iron Defense up, it does maybe 50%, just because Registeel has such high stats and I don't have any attack investment in my Incineroar. So Registeel is really, really dangerous in that scenario, because it can just start setting up Iron defenses. And yeah, I have Taunt on Incineroar, so I might be able to mitigate that, but its body press move is defense rather than attack. So my intimidate, it doesn't get intimidate anyway because Clear Body, but even at no defense boost, body press does at least 30 or 40% to Incineroar, and that's just so much damage. And yeah, it's really hard to keep up with. So that's why I needed one Pokemon. So I guess I talked about like the other 5 Pokemon, but the reason why I have Rotom Wash is because I needed a Pokemon that sets up and its own as well. Since I have 2 redirection users, I really wanted to abuse that, and I can get outpaced really, really quickly. But if I have Rotom to combat the Registeel, for example, if they don't have Amnesia, then I can boost my special attack while they can't boost their special defense, and I can overwhelm them. So that was really, really important. But otherwise, yeah, I think just on the general meta right now, one of those 3 moves or abilities is really able to deal with the opponent. So it was never really an issue. Like I could slowly chip at them without having them overwhelm me. And as long as I was just cognizant about like positioning, like they can taunt me, but as long as I switched out correctly and I knew how many Trick Room turns are left, never really a big issue.
Do you have any advice you want to give to like newer players or people who like want to be as good as you are?
You're kind, man. Appreciate it. My biggest advice, and like this is a trap I fell into when I was first getting into playing, is that you want to be the inventor. You want to be the Einstein of Pokemon immediately. Like you want to like make the most game-breaking team, and like just use something completely novel to like break a tournament. And realistically, if you're new at the game, like you just can't really do that. You just don't have the experience or the tool set to do that. So like my biggest advice is that you really like copy, you just use rental teams and use a rental team that's good, that that like has consistently performed in the format, or is used by someone that is really good, because there's a lot of put into the team. Also, ideally one that has like an article or some explanation to it, so that you aren't just flying blind, and just understanding like the mechanics of the game and like why people do certain things. That's really, really important. So yeah, don't reinvent the basically just use things that already works, and then once you get to have some results for yourself, then you can slowly iterate and say, okay, like I see this team, I want to copy it, but like I think this would be better for like this, so I'm going to change it. That's something you can slowly start doing. Even for me, like I've been playing for a bit, and recently I've started to get some results, but very rarely do I come up with a team concept entirely on my own. Like especially for this one, like I told you, like I read an article about some Japanese player who did really well on ladder, and then I adapted, for the Pokemon to be my playstyle, and then 2 completely new ones. It's not even that rare for me to take 6 Pokemon the exact same and then change the move sets or change the way I train them. That's it. So even the most experienced players really learn from each other. So yeah, I think the biggest advice I have is to just learn from the best at first, and then slowly bring your adaptations and bring your own playing strategy into the game.
That's really great advice, honestly. Like I definitely I think that's something I didn't even realize that I necessarily did, but like that is something that that I applied to, where like I learned from the best, and then eventually I started to find my own style, my own way to incorporate what I really liked or wanted to do. Do you have any shout outs for anybody?
Yeah, of course, definitely. It's interesting though, because this is the first time I really team built and practiced by myself. Like I really didn't talk to anybody about it. I don't really even know why. I guess I just felt so good about it that I thought, oh, like I can just do this on my own and figure it out. Even though I usually team build with other people, but of course, even just like mentally helping me prepare and just keeping me pumped up and stuff. I have a lot of friends to thank, and the ones who supported me, but especially my friends Jake, Kunal, Aaron and Shauna, they're really, really invaluable to me, especially. So I appreciate their support. And yeah, I mean, I can't even be where I am right now without all my friends. So everyone knows who they are. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I thought it was a great interview. And if you guys want to follow Yuki on Twitter, Twitter's down below. Thank you guys for watching, as usual. Please like and subscribe. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.